So I'm going to be running you over another client case study from Inside Build to Train. How we got Yvonne from burnt out and no training at all to dropping 13 kg and completing 2 running events, living the full-blown hybrid training lifestyle. By the way, if you can hear, there is some weird construction going on in my building, so if you can hear some hammering or drilling in the background, I apologize, but I'm still gonna record this because what to do when you work from home and you have all the shit of noise in the background. So I posted this result on my Instagram 2 weeks ago, I think. Yvonne's very unimpressive journey. So I'm going to be running you over in more detail where she was before, what we've done to get her to the place she was then in, and also the results, obviously, that she's achieved. Because I think in these longer form YouTube client case studies, it's much easier to talk through someone's journey rather than just posting a snapshot result on Instagram or wherever. I think obviously for me, based on what I do inside the coaching program and what clients, or what I work with clients and what they want to achieve, the physical transformation is still very important. I do think so, like even the visual result is still very important. I think there is a lot of, talk now in the fitness industry that transformations and before and afters, they either shouldn't be posted or they aren't important. I think they are. I think they really are. But at the same time, I think it's also important to just tell the story behind and like what the individual or the specific person has gone through, where they were before, the challenges they potentially had throughout the journey, what they've achieved, how their life has changed, how they have changed, the things that have changed for them in their life. And obviously you can't see that in a before and after, even though I do love before and afters, if they are, presented in a way, or if they have more detail to it than just, oh, this person dropped X amount of weight, or this person has done X, Y, and Z. Anyway, so where was she before? So Yvonne had actually messaged me already, I think 1 or 2 years before she started. And I remember she unfollowed me. So we had a conversation, and I'm very direct very often with people, and I will ask people questions as well, because it's our job as coaches to do that, to help someone potentially overcome their barriers or help them change the way they think, their perception of certain things, the limiting beliefs that they have. But I think Yvonne probably was pissed off with me, and then she unfollowed me, but let's leave that behind. She then came back in after, probably a year after, or maybe even 1.5 years after, and I remember I was on a holiday at that point, but she then reached out to me. She asked me, when I was taking on people again, and she really wanted to do something about it. She obviously also, she knew someone who was in the program before her. So very often, a lot of the people I work with very often come through referrals, because obviously when people join, they get the results they want, they have a great experience, they like the service, they like being inside the program, and then they very often just refer other people or see, or they get seen by other people and then ask them, oh, what did you do, blah, 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 and then, they come to me. So she was very burnt out, but that was before she had actually started. She wasn't looking after herself properly, not prioritizing herself properly. She had 3 kids. She still has them, but she has 3 kids. She also worked late nights. She was doing catering work at the time. She had a very stressful and busy life, and I think a lot of the things in her life were just relying on her. She probably lacked boundaries in certain areas as well. Then, because of the stress and all these different things, also obviously having 3 kids, pregnancies, this obviously went on for a couple of years. It wasn't just a few weeks or a few months, but convenience food obviously took over. She gained weight over the years. She was lacking energy. She used to be fit and active and training in the past. But yeah, life, kids, work, stress took over for multiple years. And then obviously with her, people usually come to me in 2 different stages. One is they are already training and they're sometimes already running, they're already lifting, they've already been in the gym for 2-3 years, maybe sometimes even longer. They might have already done running events but and achieved big things, but they're still stuck in the same cycle of not having the body composition nailed down, underperforming, knowing that there is a next level. Or they used to train, they used to be active. I also worked with a lot of people who are ex-athletes or ex-competitive sports people, because this is where I come from as well. So they used to be fit, they used to be training, they used to be active, they used to be in shape, they used to do certain things, but they've just lost it going into their adult life. Very often, I would say for the majority, it's because they've prioritized their academics, their career, and their fitness kind of dropped to the bottom. So with Yvonne, we had to really build from the ground up. So she wasn't in the gym, she wasn't training consistently, she didn't have any routines. So we've built her strength, her lifting, her training consistency, her food consistency, her daily routines, her endurance, her fitness, everything pretty much from ground zero. And I think this is where it's very important to get great coaching. Now, I'm obviously not blowing my own trumpet here, but the person you work with really needs to understand where you're currently at, because otherwise you either get too much too soon and you feel overwhelmed, or you actually get too little. So if you work with someone who doesn't get that you're not a complete beginner and they give you the most basic, like the most basic stuff, you're going to be bored and you're actually going to leave progress and potential on the table. And this is where sometimes people get almost like upset in the DMs or defensive when I ask them questions. And I had a conversation with someone recently. They actually blocked me because this person got fucking upset because I asked her certain questions, right? And she was like, oh, why do I need to explain myself? And it's like, mate, the reason why I get results with people, and if you want to get results, is because the people, they don't get defensive. They want to answer questions. They want to be heard, they want to be understood, they want to share things so that the coach can actually understand where they are, how they can best help them, and if they are even the right person as well to help them. So don't do this. It's a huge red flag in the DMs. Like, just avoiding questions and being entitled and saying things like, oh, why do I need to explain myself and blah, blah, blah. This is why you don't get results. Anyway, she used to train, but she lacked direction, simply direction, structure, and a clear way forward. So what's the first action step? So the first thing to focus on and then build on that to move forward. So what have we done? As always, depending on where the person's at, but we just followed a clear process that is tailored to the person. So in the first 4 weeks with her, we've obviously assessed where she was at. We built her training and food routine. We actually had her lift from home, so we did 4 lifting sessions from home to build the foundations, simply because she was at 0. She, in the beginning, still struggled with like managing her time, managing everything that she had on her plate. So initially, we just made it super simple, effective, and manageable for her life with her kids and her work, to train from home. And then obviously from the very beginning, I think what Yvonne did very well is she just fully leaned into coaching. Now this comes obviously with building trust, which is a two-way street always. You know, communicating honestly, being reflective, and just being detailed as well. Like sweating the little stuff. I always say this to people, you need to make this a priority. Now most people will already know this, but sometimes, like, not anymore so much, but in the past I've worked with people, not many, but there were some, who simply, like for example in week 1, already missed their check-in, and then I'm like, how is that possible, right? Like, without judging them, but in my head I'm like, how is that possible? Like, you just decided to commit to yourself, to make a change, to build trust in yourself as well, and you're already slacking and like almost like being disengaged and not treating the little things as a priority and as an important part of it. Like, you have to do this, and this is why I always say, before you commit to a coach or before you commit to something, you need to get very clear, like, as well, what you want to achieve, and obviously the things that come with it as well. So Yvonne obviously fully leaned into coaching, and then what we've done in the second phase. So in this phase, the most important thing was, I call this building trust, because if you're someone, or if someone hasn't trained for a long time, they've overeaten for a very long time, they don't have routines in place, they've broken promises to themselves for quite a while, the most important thing is to just start with the first step and get that nailed down. So training every week, ticking the lifting sessions off, not missing any sessions, and then we can go into the more like results focused process, which we've done. Then Yvonne has worked with me for actually this whole process. I think it was like over 9 months, 9 to 12. So we've then done a fat loss phase where we've dropped 13 kg over a 5 to 6 months period. She then also stepped into the gym. Obviously, she then built, confidence in herself, built trust in herself. We got her from training from home to training in the gym. We had the proper nutrition set up in place, of course, with her fat loss calories, macro targets. The most important thing for her, like I mentioned before, was already building trust around food. I think a lot of people who might have dieted before, or maybe they've gone for transformation and rebounded, or they've overeaten for a period of time, very often they lack trust in themselves around food, and this is why they go through multiple dieting phases, multiple weight loss or fat loss phases, or they can't really maintain their body weight. It's a lack of trust around food, and very often, especially with like eating out, meals out, social events. So we put the principles in place, and the tools and the things, like telling her specifically what to do around social events. She's had holidays, she managed holidays, it was summer holidays, Christmas, and of course her work life, which unfortunately everyone has to do. So there's a couple of things that Yvonne did that some people will say, oh, they're not willing to do, or some people will say, oh, this isn't necessary. So Yvonne has obviously 3 kids, she has a family, but she ate separately from her family. Now some people will say, oh, this is a no-go. I think you have to do these things depending on like what your family setup is like, right? Because you will have to change the way you eat. You can't achieve a body transformation or get yourself in shape and actually stay there without changing your eating behaviors. So if, there are certain things that maybe people around you, it doesn't even need to be family, it could be co-workers, it could be team, it could be anyone really. Separating yourself from that gives you initially the momentum, the consistency, and most importantly, the certainty that you can stay consistent. And then we also obviously gave her the principles and simple action steps to manage her food at work when it was necessary. Then after that, so at this point, we had already built, a huge change, like just the way it had impacted her body composition, of course, her lifestyle, her day-to-day life, everything around it. After the first 6 months, we then stepped into endurance training and incorporated running as well and the running event prep. So this is when we really went into more like hybrid style training. So we had her obviously lift heavy in the gym. We had her do a lifting and running split in her training, working on her aerobic base, her endurance, her running speeds, conditioning work in the gym, really progressively overloading, having her lifting heavy, building the strength. And by this point, she had already obviously built the skills of training hard, the confidence as well, the fitness and the body to step into this type of training. I think it's very important to do this first before anyone goes, if they're not yet at that level, before anyone goes into events, taking on huge volumes of training or running loads. Now, obviously, you can do this if you're with your body composition and everything already in a decent place. But with her, we've built from the ground up and just built it step by step. We then had her do 2 to 3 lifting sessions and 2 to 3 runs a week. So there's a mistake here. I hate it when this happens because I'm very anal when it comes to these things, but I'm not going to re-record this now. So took her to running events. And in these event preps, we then obviously leaned more onto the running rather than the lifting, just to make it manageable for her in terms of the training volume. The result is, so we dropped initially 13 kg of body fat. She learned how to manage her weekends, her holidays. She left the dieting lifestyle behind as well. Previously, she's done a lot of the classic things that people tend to do when they want to get in shape or they want to lose weight, or she was forcing restriction with, I think if I remember correctly, doing intermittent fasting and these kind of things, which is fine if it fits for someone, right? But for a lot of people, it's just forced restriction because they don't trust themselves that they can stick to their food when they don't have these rules in place. So we obviously got rid of that shit. We started her from lifting from home to really build the confidence to step into a gym and actually own her space as well. Started lifting heavy, tracking her progress, being performance driven as well with her training, building strength. We then stepped into running, like I said. We took her to running events. She's built a great level of endurance. The funny thing with Yvonne was, once we had dropped the weight, because Yvonne used to be relatively fit and used to do certain things, she actually had a decent level of fitness. So when we started, I would need to check the exact numbers, but when we started her off with the running, she was actually already from pretty much the get-go running decent paces, around 6 minutes per kilometer, I believe, or even sub 6, 5:45, around that something, which is great for someone who is at a beginner level. And I always say this to people: if you used to train, if you used to be fit, if you used to do certain things, once you pick it up again, yes, you might be starting from zero, but once you've then built it for a couple of months, you're actually gonna get to a very decent level very quickly. And she obviously, from an identity perspective as well, she stepped into someone who's capable, fit, training hard, and just living the full build to train lifestyle as well. Again, I think there are different types of coaching programs, of course. For the way I work with people, I don't just want them to get a surface level fat loss result or like a transactional result. Like obviously that is part of it, right? Like people need to get results, they need to have the tangible result, but I think the reason why the people who work with me and who come inside the program get incredible results, but most importantly change and maintain them as well, is because they step into a new way of training, the lifestyle that they want to live, and just having the mindset and the consistency that simply doesn't switch off, like someone who wants to get better, perform well, and just like be fit and have training as a firm part of their life. So key things that made this result possible: number one is building a very solid base and foundations. The dieting is always the last part of the pyramid, or the last part of the puzzle. So if you think of a pyramid of all the things you need to have in place, the dieting and the calories and the macros and all these different things is the final bit. You want to build the foundations underneath. Otherwise, people end up dieting year round, always being on fatless calories, and just never getting anywhere, never getting the results that they want, never actually stepping into pushing their performance or taking on new stuff or doing more exciting things. So training structure, I would say, depends a bit on the person, because you need to tailor this process to the person. But for her, it was building the training structure, feeling excited for her training, which obviously also comes from progressing, hitting her key sessions each week, progressively building strength, performance training, and stepping into hybrid training, so lifting, running, having her conditioning work in there. Then also having a clear vision and goals and a long-term roadmap. Again, of course, you can tick off your workouts every week, but if you don't have a direction or a clear programming and a clear path as to where you're going, then you will get bored and you're leaving progress on the table as well. This is something that I do with every client. It's very important. And then obviously the results that you see will drive your momentum and your consistency. From a logistics point, daily tracking, like these things obviously they always need to be done. Daily tracking, body weight, food, train, and progress peaks. And then of course the coaching system and the process. So we took her through a body comp phase first, because that's what she came in for initially, and then into performance phase. And she also, like, the mindset she had or she built is she just didn't let anything get in the way, even when it wasn't necessarily perfect. I know this is such a cliche thing to say, but yeah, like, we've worked through a lot of different things, from like work stuff, multiple holidays, Christmas. For the majority of people I work with, they actually don't use this as a reason to not start or not to. Like, I've had sometimes had clients, I actually said this in my other YouTube, was it last year or 2 years ago, I don't remember, I had someone sign up with me on the 26th of December. So yeah, it's just it's I think sometimes people look at, especially when it comes to fat loss or body transformation, as this huge like life overhaul where they need to go from one extreme to the other. And yes, of course, if you're doing a 6-week shred or an 8-week shred, yeah, you better make sure that in those 6 or 8 weeks you have nothing that gets in your way. But if you're looking to build something like for longevity and really chasing athletic goals, being in shape year round, any of this stuff just doesn't get in the way. So if you can obviously relate to any of the stuff that I've just said and you want to achieve similar results, you are in a similar spot, maybe in a better spot, maybe in a worse spot, but you have like similar goals, want to achieve similar stuff, then I'm gonna put, as always, the link in the description. I'm gonna be taking on one more intake before Christmas, which will be in November, so it's probably gonna be towards the mid of November, potentially end of November. And then you can just simply reach out to me, hit the link in the description. I'm also going to be putting in something else that you can access before that. And otherwise, just drop me directly a message and then we can speak about your goals and where you're at.